Good evening, everyone. I trust you've had a fruitful day. I do not say happy. I hope it has been happy. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the Buddha, the blessed, noble, and fully self-awakened one. So I thought this evening we'd have a go at the Dignanaka Sutta, the discourse to Dignanaka or on Dignanaka. So here we're back at the Boar's Cave on the Vulture's Peak. Vulture's Peak, remember, is near Rajgir on the mountains that surround the capital of Rajgir, modern-day Rajgir, and it's called Rajagiri, the town of the kings. That's where Bimbisara lived and ruled over Magadha, which is on the banks of the Ganges. So, having done the usual thing of courteous and amiable talk, Dignanaka says, by the way, Dignanaka is the nephew of Sariputta. So remember, Sariputta is the one of the two chief disciples of the Buddha. The other one is Moggallana, and Sariputta was known for his understanding of the Dharma, second only to the Buddha. Here, he's actually just joined the order, right? So we'll come to him at the end. So now Dignanaka approaches the Buddha and he says, my doctrine and view, this is what I believe, is nothing is acceptable to me. In other words, I don't believe in anything. So the Buddha replies, well, you believe in this anyway, that this is the correct view, nothing is acceptable. And he says, well, he says it doesn't matter whether I believe it or not. Now, these people were called eel wrigglers. So there's a passage here in another discourse. A certain teacher is dull and confused. Because he's dull and confused, when he's asked such and such a question, he engages in verbal wriggling, in eel wriggling. I don't say it is like this. I don't say it is like that. I don't say it is otherwise. And I don't say it is not so. And I don't say it is not so. So these are the people who are real skeptics who don't come down either one way or the other. Now, the Buddha replies, well, there are some people who say nothing, I don't believe in anything. But then actually, when you look underneath it all, they do actually believe in something. And some people who say, well, I believe in everything, when you look underneath it, they don't really have a belief. So in other words, it's being a skeptic, neither this nor that nor nothing else, is a difficult position to hold. As human beings, we don't like to be in a state of don't know. We like to be certain. So now there are these two opposing doctrines. The one is about eternalism, that after death, the soul goes on, the personality, etc., goes on and on. And the other one is annihilation, akin to modern day scientific materialists. So now the Buddha says something interesting here. He says, when those people say everything is acceptable to me, in other words, I'm an eternalist, they are close to indulgence, close to bondage, close to holding and clinging, right? So underneath all eternalism is this desire to keep becoming. In the view of those Brahmins who hold nothing is acceptable, they are close to non-indulgence, non-bondage, close to non-holding, non-clinging, right? Because what's the point? You're going to die anyway. Now, Dignanaka jumps on this and says, Master Gautama commends my view then, because he knows the Buddha's teaching about, letting go, relinquishment, not self. And he says, well, he then goes on, he sort of ignores that and says, those people who stand in between, something is acceptable and something's not acceptable. I believe certain things, but I don't believe in others. They suffer from both sides. right? Where they believe in something, it's a holding on, a desire to become. And where they don't believe in something, then it's just another way of annihilationism. Now we come to a session where the Buddha points out what the danger is here. Everything is, I believe in everything, is if I obstinately adhere to my view, everything is acceptable to me, only this is true, everything else is wrong, then I may clash with the other two. And with the Brahmin who says, or with the recluse or Brahmin who says nothing is acceptable, and with the one who says something is acceptable, but something is not acceptable to me. Now, I may clash with these two, and when there's a clash, there's disputes. When there are disputes, there are quarrels. When there are quarrels, there's vexation. Foreseeing for himself clashes, disputes, quarrels, and vexation, he abandons that view and does not take up some other view. This is how there comes to be an abandoning of these views. This is how there comes to be a relinquishing of these views. Now, what does the Buddha mean by views? Because opinions, because we have to have opinions, we have to have views. Every time we vote for a particular government, every time we vote for a particular party, we're coming from a particular view, a particular opinion. But he's making a distinction here between a view, an opinion, and a perspective. So a view has three parts to it. The view is wrong, or it's partial. It has this sense of conceit, I'm right and all these other people are silly. And it has an emotional commitment, and that's the tanha, mine, this is my view. And that's where the clashing and the anger and all that comes from. Whereas if you have a perspective, if you see your view and opinion as a perspective, you're actually open to everybody else's view and perspective. Some of which, of course, you might not agree with, but because there's not that holding on, I'm right and you're wrong, then there's no disputes. So he says the same thing of people who say nothing is acceptable to me. They will clash with people who say everything is acceptable, and with those who say some things are and some things are not acceptable. And the same with those who say something is acceptable, something is not acceptable. I believe in this and not in that. They will clash with people who say this is right and that is wrong. So the Buddha says, leave all this, right? Forget this thinking, views and opinions, and bring yourself down to the real investigation of the way things are. So he begins to teach him how to do vipassana. So the first thing is the body. Made of material form, consisting of the four great elements. So if you remember those, fire, earth, water, and air, procreated by mother and father, and built up out of boiled rice and porridge, is subject to impermanence, to being worn and rubbed away, to dissolution and disintegration. It should be regarded as impermanent, a suffering, a disease, a tumor, a dart, a calamity, an affliction, as alien, as disintegrating, as void, and as not self. When one regards the body, thus one abandons desire for the body, affection for the body, attachment to the body, and subservience to the body. In other words, being controlled by bodily desires. So having taught him how to look at the body, which remember is the first of the four establishments of mindfulness or awareness in the Satipatthana discourse, the discourse on how to establish it. First section, if you remember, is on the body. The second section is on feeling. So he asks him to investigate feeling, and he says, look, there are three types of feeling: pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. When you feel a pleasant feeling, you'll notice that you cannot feel an unpleasant feeling. You can't feel a neutral feeling, and so it is for the other three. One of them always knocks out the other two. And then you'll notice that they're impermanent, they're conditioned, dependently arisen. By the way, the reason he's pointed out that there are three types and the one cannot appear with the other is because of identity. I'm happy. Next minute, I'm sad. So which one is the I? Which one is the true you? Pleasant feeling, Dignanaka, is impermanent, conditioned, dependently arisen, subject to destruction, vanishing, fading away, and ceasing. And that's true, of course, of painful and neutral feelings. So now he stops here and he says, a well-taught noble disciple becomes disenchanted with pleasant feelings, disenchanted with painful feelings, disenchanted with neutral feelings. And being disenchanted, he becomes dispassionate. Through dispassion, he's liberated. When he's liberated, there comes the knowledge. It is liberated. He understands. Birth is destroyed. The holy life is lived. What had to be done has been done. And there's no more for me coming into a state of becoming. Now, the bhikkhu whose mind is liberated thus sides with no one, disputes with no one. He employs the speech currently used in the world without adhering to it. So, when the Buddha says things like, action, I call the will action. This I is simply a verbal something that is currently used to address, to express something from myself, a self-referential term. It doesn't mean that the Buddha therefore believes in a self or a real person or a person that is substantial. It's just the convention of language. Now here Sariputta is standing by the Buddha, fanning him. And he thought to himself, the Blessed One indeed speaks of abandoning these things through direct experience. The Sublime One indeed speaks of relinquishing of these things through direct knowledge. As the Venerable Sariputta considered this, because his mind stopped clinging, he was liberated from the taints. So that remember, the taints are the desire to become, and ignorance, sometimes wrong view. And so right here now, Sariputta, listening to the Buddha, becomes an arahat, completely drops all the taints. And the wanderer, Dignanaka, for him, the spotless, immaculate vision of the Dharma arose. In other words, he became a stream enterer, the first attainment. All that is subject to arising is subject to cessation. And the wanderer Dignanaka saw the Dhamma, attained the Dhamma, the truth, understood the Dhamma, fathomed the Dhamma. He crossed beyond doubt, right? So somebody who has that first path and fruit can no longer doubt the Buddha's teachings because it's his personal experience. Done away with perplexity, he is resolute and courageous and become independent of others in the teacher's dispensation. And of course the discourse ends with the usual paean, magnificent Master Gautama, magnificent. Master Gautama has made the Dharma clear in many ways, as though he were turning upright what had been overthrown, revealing what was hidden, showing the way to one who was lost, holding up a lamp in the dark to those who can see. I go to Master Gautama for refuge, to the Dharma and to the Sangha. From today, let Master Gautama remember me as a lay follower who has gone to him for refuge for life. So Dignanaka becomes one of his followers. So the teaching here is, let go of views and opinions, or at least see them as just, perspectives, not to hold on to them, and to realize that the process of liberation is nothing to do with thinking about it, nothing to do with holding these views and opinions. It doesn't matter how many books you read. They are, if they're inspirational, then they have a purpose. But the whole thing is to come back to the Vipassana, come back to constantly asking ourselves these questions about impermanence, not self, and in daily life, mainly, how we're creating problems for ourselves. So this distinction between sitting and daily life, try to close that gap. And by being mindful with everything we do, we can see, especially this desire, and then you holding on to things, And simple things like noticing that time is gone, you know, a meal is gone, one less lunch in this lifetime, things like that. So you bring that sort of mentality into your daily life, and that's what will lead us on. Okay. So I can only hope this discourse has been inspirational, and that you will, by your courageous and unfailing efforts, become like Dignanaka, stream entrant, and even like Sariputta, fully liberated sooner rather than later. So we can do some sitting. Bodang Pujani Dhammam Pujani